Hi lovelies, welcome back to the channel. Today is the K Styles. Thank you for stopping right here on my space today. So I'll be quickly sharing with you all a detailed process on how to go about the cutting and the sewing of this trendy patch bubu gown you see me putting on right here on your screen. You can as well call it a mixed African print bubu gown. It has a stylish design around the neckline area and at the body part at this front part, as you can see right here. So I'll also be teaching you all how to get rid of the front part of your bubu gown, always going upward towards your neckline area while you are walking. So this is something I've seen on many people and I'll be correcting that in today's tutorial. So if this sounds like something you're really interested in learning, please continue watching, and without much ado, let's get started. So here are the three African prints I'm working with. So for this first African print, which has multicolors, I purposely used it for this tutorial so that it can blend in with the other colors I have on these other fabrics. As you can see, I have red here, I have yellow, I have brown, I have white. The only color missing from this one that has multicolors is green, and each of these African prints I have here is 1 yard. So this is the crepe that I'll be using in the creating of the stylish design in front of the dress. So I have about 1 yard of this crepe fabric that is red in color as well. I actually chose this red color out of the multicolors I have on this first fabric right here. So I'm going to set all of this aside. So before I go ahead to cut this out, because I'll be having 3 layers of different African print fabric, I'll divide the full length of my gown of 56 inches by 3. So each of them I had 18.5 inches. So now I folded this first part of my fabric, which I'll be using for the first layer of my gown, into 2. Now I'm separating them. So when I folded this from one border to the other. So the border is basically the part that is labeled, or the part you have this writing on. That is the border of your African print, and that is where you are meant to fold. Okay, so I divided this into 2 because I want to cut out the front part of our gown separately. Okay, so I'm going to do this so that I can get rid of that effect of having your bubu gown always going up to your neckline while you are walking. After separating this piece, I went ahead to fold it into 2, and I divided my shoulder of 16 inches into 2. Then right there I marked 8 inches. So I'm trying to get my shoulder slant. From that 8 inches, I marked 1.5 inches below, and I'm connecting this way. So the next is for me to cut this out, but while I'm cutting this out, I'm not cutting exactly on that line. I'm going to leave about half of an inch away from that line so that to serve as the joining allowance on the shoulder. So remember, I already divided these 3 parts or layers of my gown into 3, and each one I have 18.5 inches. So I went ahead now to mark these 18.5 inches, and now I'm adding 1 inch extra, which is going to serve as a joining allowance to the second layer or part of this our gown. So I've marked it now, and I'll go ahead and roll this into a straight line. So I'll cut off this other side that is not needed. So basically, because I want to be getting rid of the cost of this bubu gown always going up to your neckline, from the base of this piece I'll go up by that 1 inch which I added earlier. So I'm going to cut it out as well. So I'll be replacing it at the back part of this our gown. That's how we do it for our shirts, right? So the next, I went ahead now to get my shoulder of 8 inches and also marked a neck width of 3 inches. So I'll mark a neck depth of 7 inches right here as well. It's a V neckline, and I'm connecting my neck width to my neck depth right here. So when I'm done with that, I'll move over to my shoulder. So I'll measure from my shoulder to the ends of my fabric. What I had was 9.5 inches. So I have just marked it right there, and I now roll this out because this other part wasn't straight on my fabric. So on that part where my sleeve stopped, I'm going to come down by 9.5 inches, which is going to serve as the armhole opening of this my gown. Now from that point, I'm going to go in by at least 3 inches. So this 3 inches, I'm going to curve it in from here this way, or basically you can just measure out your bust circumference. Mine is 9.5 inches, and I added extra 4.5 inches to that, so you can see what I have. So that 4.5 inches is for my allowance. So now I'm done drafting for this first part of my dress, and I'll go ahead and cut off the neckline and also cut out the armhole and then that straight part. So I'm going to cut out now for the back part of my of the first part of this gown. So you can see that I also have it folded into two, just this way, and I'll get the front part of this first layer of my gown and I'll place it right there. So before I go ahead to place this properly, I'll fold in about 1.5 inches from this back part of my fabric. So it's going to rest on exactly that line I marked on the front part of my dress. Okay, so it will have to rest there, thereby replacing that 1 inch I cut off from the base of the front part of the dress, and also ½ inch for stitching. So you can see when I measure this out, I have almost 20 inches, which means that this is more than enough and is not going to reduce in length. So by so doing, you're not going to have your bubu gown always choking or going up towards your neck. So if you're into a bubu gown, you definitely understand what I mean. So for the neck width for the back, I notched that point where my neck width for the front started, and on the other side, which is folded at the top part, I'll be notching that as well as the neck depth. Now I remove the pins I pinned here, and now I'm going to connect these two together. So now I have my neckline created. So this is like similar to the way our shirt is being cut, but it's not the same thing. So I'll get the second part or the second layer of this my gown, which is this print, which has orange, green, and all of that. So I'm going to fold this now this way. I'm not folding it now from one border to the other. So when I did it this way, I folded one and I folded again two. Now I'm going to measure this out. You realize that it's not up to 18.5 inches. So that is why you need to fold from one border to the other. That is the part which has that writings, as you can see right there. So when you fold into two, now go ahead and fold it again by the side. Okay, so I believe you understand what I mean right now. So you're going to have one part entirely closed, that is your center front, and you should align with the first part. Okay, so I'm going to roll a line on top of this second layer of my dress this way, then I'll cut it out. Then from that line, that is where I'll measure 18.5 inches and add extra 1 inch, which will be for my joining allowance to the upper part and the lower part of this my gown. So I'll cut off the other excesses that is not needed, and you can see what I have right now. And I'll cut off that part which is my starting line. So I'll align this properly now with the first part of my gown. So you can see now I'm going to roll this line straight down to the end of this second fabric I have right here. So if your hip is way bigger than your bust, at this point I'll encourage you to please measure out your hip circumference and also add 4.5 inches. So my hip difference from my bust is not that much. That was why I didn't measure out my hip circumference. Okay, so this is the third layer of the gown, and I'll also fold it again border to border. So you can see the parts that have these writings or these labels on it is there on all African prints we have. I folded it into two, and now I'm folding it again. Now it's into four. So I'm also going to roll a line at that top part, and it's going to be my starting line. I'll measure out the length, which is 18.5 inches, and also add 1 inch for stitching or for joining. Then I'll add extra 1 inch to the base, which will be for my hemming allowance, because this is the last piece or the third layer of our gown. Okay, so I'm making use of the entire fabric there at the base. So this is what I have. So I'll also align it with this other side, and now go ahead and cut it out, making sure that the center part aligns and make sure that they are closed. The only part that is meant to be open is this other part that I'm cutting out. So I'm done cutting out the 3 layers of this our gown. So you can see what we have right here. So I'm just going to keep all of this piece aside so that I can go ahead and start working on the neckline for the first layer of our gown. There was once a day that I would pray for you. I'd go and misbehave just so you know. So here now is the front layer, is the first layer of this our gown on the neckline area. So I'm going to pipe the neckline area. I'll also use the same fabric I have right here. Okay, so I'll just use it and pipe the neckline area. So I need this piece about 1 inch wide, and it should be long enough to go around your neckline. Okay, so right side of this piece facing the neckline of my dress, I'll stitch this all around and fold it again towards the wrong side. I'll also pipe the neckline for the back part of this my dress. So I've gone ahead to do that. You can see what I have. So the next is to start joining all these pieces together. So when you open this up, you have two pieces. Just keep one piece aside. So this is the part that will be for the second layer of my gown. I'm going to place it right size facing the first layer of this my gown. Then I'm going to pin it right there at the, let me just call it the waist. Okay, so when I pin this, I'll go ahead and stitch using just half of an inch, and on the right side that was what it will look like. So I'll stitch it using half of an inch just as I've shown you right here. I'll get the last piece, which is the yellow and black print fabric, and I'll also go ahead and place it right size facing the second layer this way, and I'm going to stitch it using half of an inch as well. So you can see that the 1 inch which was used for the second layer has all been taken. Okay, so now this is the piece which will be used in creating the stylish design in front of the dress. So I have this is red in color, and I want this to actually stop on my half length. So you know the one on the thumbnail stopped exactly where the first layer of the dress stopped, but my fabric wasn't enough, so I had to mark my half length of 16 inches. That is where mine will be stopping. So I'll be cutting out 2 pieces of this red crepe fabric I'm working with right here. I thought it was up to 1 year, but eventually it wasn't, so I had to just manage it. Okay, so after cutting this out, 2 pieces of it, one will be acting as the lining. I went ahead to arrange them properly, and I'll get the front part of this my dress, and on the neckline I folded it into 2. Okay, this my dress is folded into 2 after joining. I arranged it on the neckline area, so I'm going to cut this out. But before that, I'll measure out my shoulder and add extra half of an inch, because that is where I want this bold design on this dress to stop. I'll cut out the neckline area and also on that 8 inches mark where I stopped. So from the shoulder to that end, I have 5 3/4 inch. So I'm now going to root that line straight and cut off the excesses I have right there. So I'm going to place this both piece I have right here, right size facing each other, and pin it all around.
First time, our first date, you're so fine, I'm so late, you sip wine, I drink.
So you see, as I'm making sure that they align exactly on that v-neck line, and I'm pinning it all around. So after pinning this all around, now I'll go ahead and give this the shape or the design which was given to the one on the thumbnail. Okay, so you know that one part of this design has a bolder shoulder. Okay, the other part has a smaller shoulder. Okay, so just continue watching. Now on one side, you can determine the part you want to create this design. On one part of the shoulder, I'm marking 3 inches now from that neckline. You can see what I'm doing. So when I get to the base or that part of my neckline, I'm also marked 3 inches below from that middle of my neckline there. I'm at 3 inches below. So this 3 inches I marked, I'll extend the line towards this other side of this piece I have right here after connecting this other side. So I'll extend it towards this other side, as you can see right here. So from this line I have, I'm going to mark 5 inches below from this mark I have right here. This is for me to be able to create that design. Okay, so I ended up marking 5.5 inches. Remember to also add your stitching allowance. Okay, now from the middle or the center of this piece, I'll just create a curve. So you see, I just created a curve from the base into this 5.5 inches mark I marked right here. Okay, so that's just it, and I'm going to cut out this exactly the way it is. So this 3 inches I marked at this point, at this other side, my stitching allowance is also included of half of an inch. Then this other side, my stitching allowance as well of half of an inch is also included to it. So I'm going to stitch this all the way, just as I'm pointing right here, all around. I'm going to stitch excluding on the shoulder and also the other straight part of the base. So you can see what I have so far after stitching. I stitched all around using just half of an inch. I didn't touch the upper part of the shoulder and also the straight part of the base. So on this part, make sure you notch, and also if the excesses are much, you can go ahead as well and trim it off, just as I'm doing right here. I trimmed off the neckline and I notched that pointy v neckline. Okay, because if you don't do this, your v neckline won't come out really nice. Okay, so I also trim off these too much excess on the v neckline and also on the sides. So I'm going to turn this out now from this other straight part on the base of this my dress, sorry, of this piece I have right here. Okay, so that part is still open. I'll turn out everything properly and I'll go ahead and quickly iron these flats. So I've ironed this, you can see what it looks like. So I just have that part still open, which I'm going to fold in at least 1/2 inch at both sides inward this way. Then I'll go ahead and stitch it on my sewing machine. So you can see what I'm showing you right here. I'm pinning this inside and using my pin to hold this together first before I stitch. So when I was done with that, I'm going to attach this now to the neckline area of this my gown. So you can actually decide on which part this your design will face. So this is the right side and the front part of my gown and the right side of my fabric. This design is going to align on the neckline area with this my neckline of my dress this way. Please, if you don't really understand my explanation, you can see everything I'm doing right here, which is very clear and I believe it's not confusing at all. So I arrange this piece I have right here on the neckline of my dress, making sure that it aligns properly. So I'm going ahead now to pin this all around. So after pinning, I went ahead to stitch this as well all around, as you can see the difference right now, but I'm yet to iron this flat. Okay, so this is basically how you go about this. And I also stitched my pockets. So I actually have a separate tutorial on how to go about drafting a normal bubu gown, which also has a stylish neckline. In case you want to know how to go about the fixing of pocket, is included in that tutorial. So I'm going to join the front part and the back part of my gown together on the shoulder, right sides facing each other. I'll pin, then I'll use 1/2 inch and stitch this down.
Don't waste time to my place. I feel my heart erase. So catch me if I...
So after joining this on the shoulder, I'll also need to go ahead and fold or hem the ends of the sleeve twice this way to get rid of the rough edges. Okay, so I'll do all of this, and when I'm done, this is what I have. As you can see, this is the wrong side and I've folded in that part. So the next is to align our pockets. So when you do this, you realize that the back part of your gown is slightly on the shoulder, is slightly in front of your gown. It is totally fine and 100% okay. So I'm going ahead now to arrange the sides of this my gown together. On the pocket, you can see that it's aligned perfectly, and I'm going to pin this as well from the top part all the way to the base or the hem of this our gown. So remember when I was drafting, I left a sewing allowance of 4.5. Sorry, I actually gave this a 4.5 inches allowance, but I'll be stitching using just 3/4 of an inch. So that is what I'm marking all around. When you get to the pocket, you're going to stitch as well all around this way. Now when you stitch, when you get to the base, you go up by 10 inches. So when you stitch, you're going to stop exactly on that 10 inches. From here you stitch round, come back here and stop exactly on this 10 inches, which is going to be the slits. So I'm gonna ahead to do that for the both sides of this my gown, as you can see right here. And for the slit part, you are just going to fold in the other side and stitch it in just as I've done right here. Okay, so I still have these other parts of this edges still rough, which I'll still go ahead and weave, and I also hem the base as well. So that is simply how to go about this. Go ahead and iron this very well as well. So I'll flip this now to the right side for you all to have a better view of what I've done so far. I'll iron this properly before I wear it on my body, and you can see how nice this is looking. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you next time on this same channel. Bye.